Hey, what's up? Today we're going to be studying moral nihilism for my ethics class. I got a pop filter, so that's cool. Hopefully that should make things sound a little better. Maybe less pops, hopefully. I'm still trying not to do it directly into my mic though, but we'll see. Anyways, if this is anything like the last video I did about ethics, you can expect about a 2-hour study session. Maybe I can go faster this time because it's not 5 a.m. It's only 12. We'll see though. So without further ado, let's get studying. Alright. So, we're going to be studying moral nihilism. Just chapter 20. I should probably write that down. Moral nihilism. Alright. Oh, and book name. Forgot to say that. Fundamentals of Ethics by Russ, Shafer-Landau. Alrighty. Chapter 20. There are basically 3 options when it comes to determining the status of morality. Morality might be objective, its rules applying to us independently of our opinions and desires, or it might be relativistic and depend for its authority on personal or cultural preferences. Finally, morality may simply be a kind of make-believe, a complex set of rules and recommendations that represent nothing real. This last option is known as moral nihilism, from the Latin word nihil, meaning nothing. So, let's write down the definition. Moral nihilism. Which means I guess moral rules are make-believe. Make-believe. Moral nihilists join with relativists in opposing ethical objectivism. Morality is a wholly human creation. In this, nihilists and relativists are united, but nihilists are no fans of ethical relativism. Relativists believe in moral goodness, moral duty, and moral virtue. Nihilists don't. Nihilists deny that there are any moral qualities. There are no moral requirements. Nothing is morally good. Nothing merits praise or blame. Okay. So that means a human creation. And they also believe, I don't think we need to list all this. According to nihilists, there's a rigid fact-value distinction, which basically says that there is a sharp difference between facts and values. As nihilists see things, values are on the wrong side of the divide. Facts exist, whereas values don't. Value claims cannot be factual, and so cannot be true. So essentially, before we continue reading, this theory where there are no moral truths, I guess, stems from the fact that they believe that there's a fact-value divide, which states that facts are, what did they say? Did they say true, or facts are exist and values don't? True/exist, but values do not. And that, as a result, let's keep reading actually. Factual claims inform us of things. Value claims are not informative, since they since they describe nothing. You might think that it's a fact that betraying a friend is immoral, or a fact that happily giving to the needy is morally virtuous. But if nihilism is right, there are no such facts. Facts are real, values aren't. So essentially, since moral values aren't truths, they can't exist. Oh, and I started using a paperclip to hold my journal page down while I'm writing on the back side of it, so it doesn't flip over. If only I did that with the book. Alrighty. There are two important forms of moral nihilism, the error theory and expressivism. Error theorists claim that our moral judgments are always mistaken. Okay, let's write this down real quick. Two important forms. There is first error theory. Error theory. Which says that our moral judgments are always mistaken. Alrighty. Expressivists deny this while also denying that our moral claims can ever offer an accurate take on reality. So we have expressivism, which states that moral claims can never offer an accurate take on reality. Accurate claim take on morality. Okay, so next we got a paragraph, or I guess a section on error theory. So let's write down error theory. Error theory. Do you ever have the feeling deep down that morality is a sham? That's just a set of traditional rules inherited from ancestors who based it on ignorance, superstition, and fear? Perhaps it's only a convenient fiction with no underlying authority at all. The error theory of morality is built upon these doubts. It is defined by four essential claims. So it's built on four claims. And let's see. There we go. Sorry, just wanted to censor my notebook a little more on camera. Alright. Claim number 1. There are no moral features in this world. Nothing is morally good or bad, right or wrong, virtuous or vicious. A careful inventory of the world's contents will reveal all sorts of scientific qualities, being symmetrical, being a liquid, being 2 feet long, carbon-based, spherical, and so on. But the list will contain no moral features. So claim number 1. There's no moral features in our world. Claim number 2. No moral judgments are true. Why not? Simple. There's nothing for them to be true of. There are no moral facts, and so no moral claims can be accurate, since there are no moral facts for them to record. So, judgments true, as there's nothing for them to be based off of. So it follows that 3. There is no moral knowledge. Knowledge requires truth. If there is no moral truth, there can be no moral knowledge. So the fact that there's no moral judgments or features means there's no such thing as moral knowledge according to error theory. And next, the last defining feature of error theory is that our sincere moral judgments try and always fail to describe the moral features of things. Thus, we always lapse into error when thinking in moral terms. We are trying to describe the moral qualities of things when we make our moral judgments. But since nothing has moral qualities, all of our moral claims are mistaken, hence the error. So moral judgments try and fail to describe moral features, as there are no actual moral features for them to even describe correctly. So they result in mistaken outcomes or, I guess, beliefs. How many pages is this chapter? I'm just curious. Okay. 64. Ooh. This one might be a long one. Yeah, this chapter looks a little bit longer than some of the others, but I got a test on this due on Wednesday, so it's not like I have another choice. Okay. Error theorists are not launching some small-scale attack on morality. They are not criticizing our current views on, say, welfare policy or capital punishment and trying to replace them with better ones. Rather, as they see it, all moral views are equally bankrupt. There is some very deep mistake that everyone committed to morality is making. The error theorists promises to reveal that mistake and to expose the real truth. Morality is nothing but a fiction. For those who are fond of analogies, the following may help. The error theory is to morality as atheism is to religion. Error theorists and atheists deny the truth of a widely accepted worldview. They do this by trying to pinpoint an error that is said to lie at the very heart of the system they oppose. Atheists are, in effect, error theorists about religion. They believe that there are no religious features of the world, that no religious claims are true, and that religion believers try and always fail to speak the truth about God. Atheists deny that there is any religious knowledge. The central explanations for all of this is simple. If atheists are right, then common religious claims, God speaks to me, God created the universe, God knows everything, are all wrong, because they are based on the mistaken assumptions that God exists. Atheists can successfully defend their view only if they can convince us that there's an error at the heart of religious belief. Likewise, moral error theorists can vindicate their view only if they show that there is some fatal flaw at the heart of morality. And that depends on what the fundamental error of morality is supposed to be. In principle, we can develop any number of error theories depending on which basic error in morality is supposed to commit. But in practice, there really has only been one candidate. All error theorists have agreed that the core mistake that undermines morality is its assumption that there are objective moral standards that supply each of us with an excellent reason for obedience, regardless of the supernatural, regardless of what we care about. According to error theorists, just as religion crucially depends on the supernatural, morality essentially depends upon its being objective and providing us with categorical reasons that apply to us regardless of whether acting on them will get us what we want. If the central assumption is mistaken, then the entire enterprise of morality is bankrupt. So essentially, error theory one sec, I need to move my keyboard. So error theory denies the existence of objective moral standards. And categorical reasons. Alright. Categorical reasons that apply to us regardless of whether acting on them will get us what we want. One sec. There we go. There are two substantial points that error theorists must convince us of. First, they must show that buying into morality really does assume a commitment to moral objectivity and categorical reasons. That will be news to many, to subjectivists and relativists, for instance, and to expressivists, whose views we are soon to discuss. If morality does not, in fact, rely on these assumptions, then the error theorists' claims will fail. But suppose that the coherence of our moral thinking and practice does indeed depend on the twin assumptions that morality is objective and that it provides us with categorical reasons. This reveals the second burden that error theorists must shoulder. They must show that at least one of these assumptions is false. So they also deny categorical reasons, which I don't know about their definition of it. Like, it says that reasons that apply to us regardless of whether acting on them will get us what we want. I suppose that it's just talking about the actual part of the actual aspect of categorical reasons that we would care about in order to determine they're part of natural or objective truths. All right. But suppose that the coherence of our moral thinking and practice does indeed depend on the twin assumptions that morality is objective and that it provides us with categorical reasons. This reveals the second burden. Oh, I just read this. Whoops. Perhaps they can do that. We have already considered arguments concerning our reasons to be moral, and we will, in the next chapter, look at the most prominent attempts to undermine the objectivity of morality. So rather than repeat these efforts, let us consider some implications of the error theory. Though very few people outside of philosophical circles have ever heard of the error theory, the worry it expresses is familiar enough. And so too is the typical response. Abandoning morality would have absolutely terrible results. Further, even to seriously consider that morality may be fiction is to show a corrupt mind, and error theorists, therefore, are not to be trusted. Once people give up on morality, they will feel free to act in any way they please. It won't be pretty. There are two lines of criticism at work here, and both are mistaken. The first we might call the argument from disastrous results. And I think I'm going to need a new page for this, so let's flip over. Moral nihilism. So, arguments against. We have the argument from disastrous results. Argument from disastrous results. Premise 1. If widespread acceptance of a view that would lead to disastrous results. If a widespread acceptance to a view would lead to disastrous results, then that view is false. 2. Widespread acceptance of error theory would lead to disastrous results. Therefore, the error theory is false. It's like we have two different sides clashing here. We have like the nihilistic side and then the people that are like, no, nihilism can't be real because then it would be bad. Like, look, I'm not saying whether nihilism's true or not, but that's a really stupid argument to use in response to it, you know? Anyways. View leading to disastrous results is false. Error theory I guess would lead to disastrous results, which even then we don't know if that's true or not. Results 3, therefore error theory must be false. False with an E. Alright. It's an interesting question whether premise 2 is true. I won't venture an opinion here on whether it is, nor do we need to, since premise 1 is definitely false. The truth of a theory does not depend on the results of everyone's embracing it. To see this, consider a similar argument against atheism. Some people claim that widespread belief in atheism would generate disaster. I don't know if that's right, but suppose it is. Still, that is no evidence that God exists. After all, if some highly classified state secrets were revealed and became widely accepted, it might cause disaster too. But that hardly shows that the claims made in those documents are false, so we cannot undermine the error theory by arguing that its popular acceptance would lead to a downfall of civilization. Even if it would, some have found premise 1 tempting because they've confused it with a close cousin. 1a. If widespread practice of a given action will lead to disastrous results, then that action is immoral. But this really is a confusion, since premise 1 speaks of theories and their truth, rather than actions and their moral status. And in any event, 1a is false, as we saw in earlier discussion. If everyone were to practice celibacy, then disaster would ensue. That doesn't show that it is immoral to be celibate. Others have confused premise 1 with a more specific version. 1b. If widespread acceptance of a moral theory would yield disastrous results, then that theory is false. This cannot be so easily dismissed. Many philosophers thought that 1b is true, though a number of others, most utilitarians, have rejected it. Fortunately, we do not have to settle the matter here, because the error theory is not a moral theory. It does not try to tell us where duty lies, or which character traits are virtues. The error theory rejects all moral theories and says that every single one is mistaken. Since the error theory is not a moral theory, principle 1b does not apply to it at all. Problems. Accuracy doesn't depend on results. If that makes sense. Might be a weird way of wording it. Okay. If the error theory isn't a moral theory, then what is it? In fancy terms, it is a metaphysical theory, a theory about what the world is truly like, and what really exists. Theism is a metaphysical theory. It says that God exists. Other metaphysical theories try to defend the existence of the soul or free will or immortality. The basic problem with the argument from disastrous results is that metaphysical theories cannot be tested in a way that its first premise claims. For instance, we cannot prove that we have free will, or just by showing, if we can, that the terrible results would occur if we abandoned our belief in it. Metaphysical theories try to tell us what the world is like. Such theories might contain some bitter truths, ones that, if widely accepted, would lead to heartache, or loss of faith, or the breakdown of long-standing customs or social practices. That's what makes them bitter. At best, this might give us some reason not to publicize these claims, but it is no reason to suppose that they are false. Another popular objection to the error theory is really targeted at error theorists themselves. The idea here is that those who reject categorical reasons and the objectivity of morality are bound to be untrustworthy. Conscience serves as an effective check on our antisocial impulses only if we see moral duty as something real, as a set of rules imposed from the outside, ones that have genuine authority over us. Error theorists reject this picture, and so will feel free to let their destructive, self-interested impulses take control of their decisions. Since error theorists are so untrustworthy, the views they put forth should not be trusted either. So, I don't know. I think this says it down here, ad hominem, which I believe. Don't flame me if I'm wrong. Means, I think it's an attack on author or on personality. I forget. Attack on the messenger. I forget. But that is what's going on here. So we have the ad hominem where error theorists untrustworthy. As morality. One sec. Conscience serves as an effective check on our antisocial impulses, only if we see morality as real. So conscience. Effective check on antisocial impulses. Anti-social impulses. Only if we see moral duty as real. Moral duty is real. Therefore, they don't trust him. And that's their claim. All that aside, this kind of criticism does nothing to address the issue of whether the error theory itself is true. Indeed, it represents a classic kind of fallacy, the ad hominem attack. When leveling such a critique, one tries to undermine the truth of a position by criticizing the characteristics of its supporters. Don't like the message? Attack the messenger. Aside from being a bad sport, such a strategy entirely misses the mark. We want to know whether morality is make-believe. We can't answer that question by engaging on character assassination. I'll label this bad arguments against, because this is a section for bad arguments against it. Also, I'm getting cold, so I'm going to go grab my sweatshirt real quick. Almost done. Alrighty. The only way to correctly answer is by doing two things. First, we need to determine whether error theorists are correct in thinking that morality really does depend on two assumptions: that it is objective and that it supplies us with the reasons to obey it, regardless of our desires. I'm not sure whether this is what we really are committed to when thinking morally. Certainly, subjectivists and relativists deny these assumptions, and so they will deny the existence of any error, since they reject the thought that morality depends on claims 1 and 2. But suppose the error theorists are right about what we are committed to when we adopt a moral outlook. To assess this view, we must undertake a second investigation to determine whether categorical reasons exist and whether morality is objective. Stay tuned. We'll consider these matters at great length in Chapter 21. Damn, leaving us on this cliffhanger like that. Jeez. So next we have Expressivism. Expressivism is another family of views that deny the objectivity of morality. Indeed, expressivists accept the first three claims that define the error theorist's point of view. 1. There is no moral features in this world. 2, no moral judgments are true. And 3, there is no moral knowledge. So, claims, to rewrite this, there is no moral features in this world. 2, there are no moral judgments. No moral judgments are true, rather. And 3, there is no moral knowledge. Unlike error theorists, however, expressivists think that morality is in pretty good shape. There is no deep error at the heart of our moral thinking, but how can that be if 1 to 3 are true? Simple. Expressivists reject the fourth feature that is essential to error theory. 4. Our sincere moral judgments try and always fail to describe moral features of things. Try and fail to describe moral features. To describe moral features. Okay. So, what I can see from this much is that moral error theorists seem to believe that there's a problem directly seated within the concept of morality as a whole, and it seems like expressivists focus more on the fact that we as humans are incapable of making correct moral judgments from what I assume to be some kind of natural imperfections that are part of being a human being. And so far this theory is looking a lot more believable in my opinion than the other one, but let's read more about it. According to expressivists, we are not trying to speak the truth when making moral judgments. We are not trying to make an effort to describe the way the world is. We are not trying to report the moral features possessed by various actions, motives, or policies. Instead, we are venting our emotions, commanding others to act in certain ways, or revealing a plan of action. When we condemn torture, for instance, we are expressing our opinion or our opposition to it, indicating our disgust to it, publicizing our reluctance to perform it, and strongly encouraging others not to go in for it. We can do all of these things without trying to say anything that is true. So essentially the expressivist says that when we are making quote-unquote moral judgments, we are simply stating our opinions and not actually uncovering any underlying facts about what is moral or not. We're not trying to speak the truth when making moral judgments. We're not trying to speak truth when making moral judgments. One of the very basic ideas behind expressivism is that moral claims function very differently from straightforward factual claims. Factual claims try to represent the way the world really is. If expressivism is right, moral claims serve quite different purposes. I know that sounds puzzling. To get a better sense of what's going on, consider the sentence. Torture is immoral. It appears to function like the sentence, water is wet. Sentence B tells us that water has a certain feature, being wet. Sentence A looks similar. It appears to tell us that torture has a certain feature, being immoral. And there's nothing special about A. All moral claims seem to assign a moral quality to something or other. But if there aren't any such qualities, then aren't our moral claims always mistaken? Not necessarily. If expressivism is true, then the similarity between sentences such as A and B is only superficial. When we say that torture is immoral, for instance, we are not describing torture. We are not saying that it has any features at all. We aren't even describing our feelings about it, as subjectivists claim. Rather, it's as if we are saying one of the following. Torture, don't torture. Let me plan a life that doesn't include torturing others. Will everyone please refrain from torture? These utterances can't be true, but they can't be false either. And that marks the central difference between expressivism and error theories. The error theorists think that our sincere moral claims are always meant to state the truth. But since there isn't any moral truth, such claims are all mistaken. The expressivists, by contrast, think that our moral claims are largely all right, since they're doing what they're intended to. And what is that? According to expressivists, moral claims are not in the business of holding up a mirror to the world. Their job is to vent our feelings, give orders and command, and express our commitments. Since they manage to do that just fine, there's no reason to change them with error. So essentially, we're just talking about things we like or dislike while we're talking about what we claim to be moral judgments, I suppose. The basic philosophical motivation behind expressivism is pretty straightforward. Expressivists want a way to have confidence in morality. The basic philosophical motivation behind expressivism is pretty straightforward. Expressivists want a way to have confidence in morality, while rejecting ethical objectivity. In doing so, they want to avoid the difficulties that hamper cultural relativism and ethical subjectivism. The biggest problem for relativism and subjectivism, as we saw in the previous chapter, is that these views either generate contradictions or are unable to explain moral disagreement. Expressivists handle both problems with ease. Contradictions arise when the same claim is said to be true and false at the same time. If expressivists are right, no moral claim is either true or false, and so moral contradictions disappear. Expressivists see moral disagreements as a clash of emotions or personal commitments. Debates about abortion, for instance, reveal nothing about its moral features, since there aren't any, but a lot of the feelings of differing parties. One side feels angered and upset by abortion, and the other doesn't. The emotional investment we see in so many moral debates is just what we should expect, given the expressivists' analysis on moral disagreement. Expressivists cannot escape the worry about moral equivalence, however. Their official view is that there are no moral values and no moral truths. If that is so, then all moral views are on par with one another. Some such views may be more intentionally consistent than others, and may contain fewer factual errors. Others may be more likely to bring happiness or contentment. Yet, none of these things make moral view closer to the truth. Here are further worries. Three seem to be especially serious. Firstly, how is it possible to argue logically about morality? How is it possible to have logical arguments about morality? About morality. If, as expressivists say, moral claims cannot be true, then this makes it very difficult to understand how moral argument is possible. Logical argumentation is truth-preserving. A logically valid argument is defined as one whose conclusion must be true, provided that the premises are true. If, as expressivists say, moral claims cannot be true, then how could they possibly be used to support other claims? To see the worry here, consider this argument. All action that dehumanizes people are immoral. Torture dehumanizes people. Therefore, torture is immoral. The argument appears to be logically perfect. If you accepted both premises, then you would have to accept the conclusion. After this, the argument has the very same logical structure as the philosophical classic. 1. All men are mortal. 2. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. And everyone admits that this argument is logically valid. Given the truth of the two premises, the conclusion can't possibly be false. From a logical point of view, these two arguments appear to be identical, and there is a natural explanation for this. The first two premises in each argument can be true, and if they are, then the conclusion is true as well. But expressivists cannot accept this natural explanation, since they deny that moral claims can be true. Looking at the first argument, if premise 1 really means dehumanizing actions, or don't dehumanize people, there is no way that this premise can be used logically to support any conclusion, but it seems clear that it is being used precisely this way. The logic of the first argument is watertight. Even if you are suspicious about the merits of the actual premises, indeed, logical moral argumentation seems like a real possibility. We do it all the time, and have been doing it throughout this book. Expressivism does not seem to be able to explain this. Let me grab some more water. Okay, next we have expressivism and amoralists. Expressivism and amoralists. An amoralist is someone who sincerely makes moral claims but is entirely unmoved by them. Such people create a serious problem for expressivism. So essentially, it seems that expressivism cannot explain the existence of these people. Amoralists make moral claims, but they are unmoved by them. Unmoved by them. And it seems like expressivism cannot explain their existence. Cannot explain existence. I mean the above's existence, not existence in general. Expressivists warn us not to be fooled by the superficial similarity between factual claims, like water is wet, and moral ones, torture is immoral. Moral claims assert nothing, they describe nothing. Instead, they express our feelings. Indeed, that is how the expressivist explains why our moral judgments so reliably motivate us. These judgments convey our feelings, and our feelings are what move us to act. But that makes it impossible for someone to say, to really think that charity is admirable and yet be indifferent when it comes to forking out his own money. It would be impossible for a soldier to think that his duty is to face enemy fire while remaining completely unmotivated to do so. Such cases may really be impossible, but the evidence points the other way. Amoralism is unusual, to be sure, but not unheard of. Indeed, expressivism faces the same problem that psychological egoism does. In the face of evidence that supports the existence of altruism, egoists insist that people must either be deceiving themselves or lying to us about their motivations. Expressivists have the very same issue about the evidence of amoralism. One sec. All such evidence must be disqualified. The person who is really lacking in motivation cannot be sincere in his moral claims, or if he is sincere, then he must be motivated, and so his claims to the contrary are either lies or instances of self-deception. Such a diagnosis may be correct, but the burden here weighs heavily on the expressivist's shoulders. And the third issue is about the nature of moral judgment. Nature of moral judgment. And there's still 20 more pages left in this chapter, so I might just have to do it in 2 parts, but we'll see. I am getting pretty tired. A final concern has to do with whether expressivists are right to challenge the dominant view of what we do when we make moral judgments. Either objectivists, ethical relativists, and error theorists agree on almost nothing, but they've reached consensus on one point. Moral claims try to tell us about the moral features of things we actually have. Moral judgments can be either true or false, depending on how well they report the truth about things which have moral qualities. Expressivists deny this. They reject the idea that moral claims are trying to represent the way things are. They deny that there are any moral features. They deny that moral judgments could ever be accurate descriptions of reality. How do we know whether their hypothesis is correct? Return to our original example. They claim that torture is immoral. If we understand this literally, the sentence says that torture has a certain feature, being immoral. As we saw, expressivists can't read it this way. They have to paraphrase the sentence so that it isn't assigning any specific feature to torture. Perhaps you have found the various translation they offered to be attractive, but what about these claims? Nobody but Jeff knows how to behave when the boss is around. I'm not sure whether torture is ever acceptable, but I am sure that those who are wiser than I am have the correct answer. There is a difference between an action's being required, morally good, virtuous, and deserving of praise. Some actions fulfill moral duties and yet lack moral worth. Virtue is its own reward. The degree of punishment should match the degree of wrongdoing. If war is immoral, then military generals are less virtuous than they seem. Read as objectivists, subjectivists, relativists, or error theorists would do, the sentence structure of these claims is transparent. They are readily understandable. It's not all clear how expressivists could reword them to turn them into commands, emotional expressions, or plans. People put their words into various purposes. The best way to tell whether people are joking, questioning, inviting, or trying to state the truth is to simply ask them. People are usually pretty trustworthy on this source. Not always, of course. When we are playing to win at poker or negotiate a business deal, we may be deliberately misleading. Still, exceptions aside, people are the best judges of their own intentions, and their testimony in such matters are usually reliable. That's not a thrilling point, but it has direct bearing on expressivism's plausibility. When we ask people how they think of their moral claims, almost everyone will reject the expressivist analysis. For the most part, we do regard our moral claims as true. We regard our opponent's views as false. We take our moral condemnations to the cases of describing, say, the injustice of insider trading, or reporting the moral corruption of the vicious tyrant. Sorry, I lost my spot. At the bottom, we intend our moral judgments to function as something other than emotional outbursts or expressions of commands or plans. We might all be lying or deceiving ourselves about what we are actually doing, but by far, the more charitable view is that we mean what we say. When making moral judgments, we are trying to speak the truth. We are intending to state facts. We aim to accurately present the moral details of the situations we are thinking of. If that is so, then expressivism is in serious trouble. Oh, and it looks like I was getting this mixed up with another chapter because we've actually reached the conclusion. That's good, I can sleep tonight. So, conclusion. The vision of morality that so many of us believe in, one that sees morality as a set of objective duties and rules, supplying each of us with strong reasons to do as it says, may be fundamentally mistaken. Subjectivists and relativists certainly think so. And so do error theorists and expressivists. Error theorists are the most cynical of the lot, thinking as they do that morality is a bankrupt enterprise. This thought stems from their view that our moral thinking is based on assumptions that turn out to be false. If the foundations of an entire way of thinking are corrupt, the whole worldview might come tumbling down. That's the way atheists see religious claims. And that's the way error theorists see moral ones. Expressivists are not so pessimistic. They agree with error theorists in denying that ethics is objective and in denying that moral duties supply us with categorical reasons. But since expressivists do not believe that moral thinking rests on these foundations, they don't feel the need to accuse the rest of us of error. Moral talk does pretty much what it's supposed to do: give vent to our emotions, express our feelings about things, and signal our commitments. And so there's little reason for worry. But as we have seen, expressivism does not give us some cause for concern. True, it does offer a picture of morality that frees us of fundamental error. It solves the problem of contradiction. It neatly explains the nature of moral disagreement. It supports our view that emotions are a central part of moral judgment, and yet it has difficulty making sense of how logical moral argumentation is possible. It fails to make room for amoralism. It clashes with our views about what we are intending to do when we make moral judgments. Expressivists are hard at work on these problems. There's a very lively conversation about the pros and cons of expressivism going on right now in philosophy departments around the world. In the last decade, this conversation has reached levels of sophistication that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. It's far too early to tell whether expressivism is down for the count or whether its defenders can identify a new solution to these perennial problems. Even if, in the end, expressivism turns out to have more costs than benefits, this doesn't leave objectivists in the clear. It may be that morality is all make-believe, as error theorists claim. Most of us, especially we textbook authors, hope this isn't so. Yet, a hope is hardly evidence one way or another. Whether we should think of morality as bankrupt depends on what the best arguments tell us about the nature of morality. We'll be in a better position to see the force of these arguments after working through the next chapter. And that's that. Chapter 20 about moral nihilism. And I'm surprised I got this done in an hour. Geez, I'm always surprised about how much water it takes to talk. I'm surprised how I'm able to play games and calm and talk to other people while playing them and not need water, but when it comes to reading this out loud, it's just, it drives me up. Remember to drink your water, kids. So yeah, that was an interesting chapter. It's gonna need a while to digest, though. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah, morality for the win. I guess I'll see you guys later.